Hello! In this Unity tutorial, we're going to cover timeline animation. Animation is such an exciting topic to talk about as it allows you to see your creations come to life. There are multiple types of animation inside of Unity, such as script-based animation, sprite sheet animation, and timeline animation, which is the topic of today's video. I've gone ahead and created a blank 2D Unity project. If you need help doing this, please visit the project setup video on this channel before getting started with this video. In this video, we're going to go ahead and do a few things to a cube. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to move it across the screen from left to right. So to do that, we'll need a cube. So go to the upper left-hand corner, the Game Object File menu. Drop down, select 3D Object. From this list, select Cube. Now, although it is a 3D object, we'll still be able to view it in a 2D perspective. We'll just be able to see it as a square on the screen. If you were to flip to the 3D perspective by selecting this 2D toggle, you'll be able to see the cube in actual 3D, but for the purposes of this video, let's go ahead and keep that 2D toggled. Okay, if we take a look at the Game View tab, the Game View tab is going to show us that cube as a square on the screen. And let's actually go ahead and change the background color of the camera just so it's not this atrocious blue. So we'll select the main camera and you'll see the background color over here. Let's select something a little bit easier on the eyes, such as this white color. Okay. Next thing is let's get our cube into its initial position. So where do we want it to start from? So with the cube selected in the hierarchy, you'll notice the properties of the object populate on the right hand side of your screen in the inspector. And what we're going to do is we'll need to be in the Scene View tab to be able to manipulate this object. As a reminder, if you try to use the transform tools, such as the Move tool, which is the second from your left, you're not going to be able to interact with this in the game view, as the game view is what the end user is going to see. It's what your final product is going to look like. Rather, we have to be on the Scene View tab to be able to make modifications to this object. With the Move tool selected, we're going to go ahead and click, hold, and drag this red axis and just position it on this side of the screen. And you'll be able to see that the cube has moved to this side of the screen. Okay, so first things first, we want to get this cube just to move from left to right, so across the screen just like this. So that's going to be an animation. So to do that, we're going to have to go ahead and open up the animation window. So this is going to be found in the window menu. So we'll do Window, Animation, and select Animation. This is going to bring up a free-floating box named Animation. Click, hold, and drag on the Animation tab and dock it next to your Console tab. I find it easiest to work here on the bottom, but of course you can position it wherever you would like. With the cube selected in the hierarchy, you'll notice that in this box down here it says to begin animating cube, create an animator and an animation clip. Okay, let's go ahead and click the create button and we'll call this animation move left. Just like there. Move right, excuse me. I need to learn my directions. Okay, so we'll save that. And then you'll notice that the box down here has changed. So now it looks a little bit more like a timeline. We can see these time indicators here. Now a few things have happened, and let's talk about them. So you still have the cube selected in the hierarchy. First, let's talk about the inspector. You may have noticed that a new component was added to the cube. This component is called an animator. An animator is responsible for handling the animation clips for an object. An object can have multiple animations. The animator is going to be responsible for choosing which animation to play based on some parameters. Parameters, if you're not familiar with scripting, are just some information that we're going to supply to the animator. And some examples of this may be like a number. If we pass it a 1, we would like to play this animation. If we pass it true or false, maybe we want to select between two different animations. We'll talk about those in a different video, but just keep that in the back of your mind. For the purposes of this video, we're just going to be working with one animation clip and just getting this moving from left to right. Now the animator has a controller. This is called the animation controller, and when you created the animation by clicking the create button down here, it's going to automatically set up all this for you. So this first time around, don't worry too much about what's going on over here. You'll notice that if you were to double click on this, it's going to bring you to a different screen. Now if you double clicked on that, you'll notice we created an animation called Move Right, and you'll see that right here. Because it's orange, this is the default animation. What that means is the second that we press play to start our scene, this is the animation that's going to play. And of course we can have a lot of different animations in this space, and we can define transitions between those animations outside the scope of this video, but I hope that gets you excited for all the possibilities that you can do with animations. Okay, so to get out of this, let's go back to the scene, and we'll make sure to select on our cube. Again, there's a bunch of other parameters here that we'll be talking about in a later video. Okay, so now in our animation, we notice that this window changed as well. We see the name of the animation here in the bottom left, Move Right. We also see a button for Add Property, okay, and then we see the timeline. What we want to be able to do is we're going to set the position of the cube to this location, then we're going to go a little bit forward in time, and we're going to set the ending position. So let's just do that, and then we'll explain it as we go. So the first thing that we want to do is set the current position. So we'll want to add a new property. Now there are a bunch of different things that you can control. For the purpose of this video, I said that we were just going to focus on the basic ones, the transform properties. But you can also control things such as the mesh renderer and the box collider. Again, this can get very complicated very quickly, so we're just going to stick with the basics for now. In later videos, of course, we're going to cover all these other exciting topics. Okay, we'll download, or not download, but we'll open up the transform, and we want to select the position. Of course, we can do position, rotation, scale. We'll take a look at those in just a minute. But click the little plus next to position. Now, you're going to notice two things happened here. It set some weird diamond shapes here and at the end here at 1 second. So one thing that you can do is if you put your mouse in this lighter area with the numbers, if you click down with your left mouse button, you can drag this. You'll notice that this number here is changing, and this is representing your frames. So these are each individual frames. So as we move this, I'm clicking and holding down the left mouse button and moving. We're moving essentially our cursor to a given frame. Now this total length of this is 1 second, denoted by this. We have the 1:00. So here we start at 0:00, which is 0 seconds, 0 samples. Samples, for the purposes of this video, we'll just call them frames. And you can see we go up to 60 frames. So you can almost think of this as a 60 frame per second animation. Now you'll notice here we have the cube position. And if you drop down this little drop down here, you'll see position X, Y, Z. Now this is corresponding to these parameters. In the upper right hand corner of the inspector, you can see they're blue. That is Unity letting you know that this is what is being changed. This animation is directly affecting the position transform up here. It just makes it a little bit easier to find. As you move your cursor around, these values will update if the object is moving. Now, you may ask yourself, I'm moving this around, why aren't the values changing? Well, the reason is when you initially do add property position, it's going to set you up with a 1 second animation of the same position. So this and this are exactly the same position. So if we were to go ahead and play this, you'll notice that the cube is not going to move at all. So let's go ahead and unplay that. We'll select back on the cube, get this to update here. And now what we're going to do is go ahead and move this. So once we have this window back up, go ahead and click this little red icon. Now this looks like a record button, I like to call it. This is going to allow us to enable or disable keyframe recording mode. So when you select that, you'll notice that the timeline is going to turn red. Before you touch anything, make sure to set your positional marker. So if we go ahead and click, hold, and drag on this thing, let's bring it up to the 1 second mark, and then go ahead and move it across the screen to where you want it, and then go ahead and release the mouse, and then go ahead and uncheck the record. Now you'll notice that when you drag along here, it's going to move. The reason why I wanted you to immediately go ahead and drag this over there is if you were to enter into recording mode right here and then go ahead and drag it just like that, that's where your animation is going to start from. So now it's going to start from here and go over to the right. You want to make sure when you're using record mode that you have your positional cursor in the correct location before making any modifications to the object. I'm going to go out of record mode, Control Z, just to undo that. So now this will move from left to right. If we go ahead and press play, we'll be able to see this. So it's going from left to right, repeating over the course of 1 second. Let's go ahead and uncheck the play button. Now, with the cube selected, click down here to refresh. If we take a look at the animator again, so go ahead and go to the inspector, animator, double click on the controller, which in this case is called cube. After you double click on that, go ahead and select on this movement clip here. Now there are a lot of properties associated with animation clips, and we're not going to get into them in this video. There is one that I wanted to point you to, and it's this speed one. So this is going to be how fast you want the animation to actually play out. Now typically what you'll want to do is you'll want to scale your animation so that it is longer on the timeline rather than directly manipulating the speed itself. The speed variable is very handy if you're controlling the animation speed from script. Like for example, if you had a feature inside of your Unity project or game that slowed down time, what you could do is you could slow down the speed of all the animations, maybe by 30%. And if they're all at a value of 1, that makes it really easy, and they're really easy to look at. But if you naturally make your animations all 1 second but control them via the speed, it's going to become really wonky when you want to do that in the future. Now, we'll go ahead and change this just so you can see it temporarily. We'll change it to 0.5. We'll go ahead and press play. And you can see that it's definitely moving much slower. We halved it by 50%, so it's going to move across the screen in a 2-second time span. That wouldn't be intuitive though, just looking at it, because we didn't know that the speed was halved and what the original length of the animation clip was. My recommendation, leave the speed at 1, control the length of the animation from the actual animation window. What I mean by that, let's select back on the cube. So go ahead and scroll outward just to make a little bit more room. Now you'll notice this goes beyond 1. We can make this as theoretically as long as we want. You can use the scroll bar at the bottom to move this around. What we're going to do is go ahead and select in the very top diamond and click, hold, and drag with the left mouse button. And we're going to change the length of this. We'll bring it up to the 3-second mark. So now if we were to go ahead and play this animation sequence, it's much slower, but if we take a look at the actual animation clip, it is actually 3 seconds in length. Now if we were to go ahead and have the animation speed again, we'd have a 6-second animation. But that is a possibility for you to do. I just want to make you aware of the 2 different ways that you can scale the length of your animation. The final thing that people ask is, how do I make the animation not loop? Okay, so if you go back to the Project tab, you'll notice we have 2 new things here, these 2 strange looking icons. This here is the animator controller. If you clicked on the cube and select once, don't double click on it, just once, you'll notice that it highlights over there. That's the animator controller. This is the actual animation clip itself. So if you select on that, in the inspector there's one property here for the loop time. You're going to want to uncheck that box. If you uncheck that box, press play. The animation will now play for the 3 seconds, and then it will be finished at that time. Let's play with some additional properties really quick. If you select on the cube, reselect on animation. We'll go ahead and just bring this up so we don't see all that. Let's go ahead and add the scale. So we'll do add property, transform, scale. Now remember, it's going to move across the screen but stay the same size. So first, set our positional marker. So we'll set it, actually let's put it right in the center. So at about a second and a half, we'll go ahead and click the record button. And this time, let's go ahead and add some values in. So I'm going to scale the cube up to 3, tab 3, tab 3 to make it a little bit bigger. And then it's going to go back down to 1. So now when we play our animation, we can actually play it down here, kind of preview it before we go into play mode. If we click this play button here, it's going to get bigger and then smaller. And it'll just repeat in this preview. And maybe we want to do the scale as well. Or sorry, the rotation. Let's go ahead and add a new property, transform, rotation. And now what we'll do is we'll leave the rotation as it is. We'll go ahead and bring it up here. Maybe we'll rotate it. What does it look like on the X rotated? Well, that's rotating it kind of this way, so we're not going to be able to see that. Let's try on the Y. Third time's the charm. Maybe let's try at 45. That looks cool. And then maybe at the very end we'll rotate it to 90 degrees. So it's going to look the same, but it should flip over on its side, so just like that. Awesome. You can pretty quickly see that there are a lot of things we can do with this. One of the most popular things that people like to do is to make animated logos. So we see that this cube moving across the screen already looks pretty cool. We could add some text to it and animate the text. We can animate anything inside of Unity, so we can move the text right along with it. And it is important too, let me show you as well, if you have a parent-child relationship. So let's go ahead and create one more object here, a 3D object and sphere. We'll go ahead and parent this sphere to the cube. So click, hold, drag directly on top of the cube so that it becomes under it, just like this in the hierarchy. Now if we select in the cube and we select add property now, you'll see that we now have access to the sphere. So we can actually control everything about the sphere as well. So let's say we wanted to do something with the scale of the sphere. Go ahead and add that, and you'll know it's going to move with it. So that's actually really cool. If we take a look at the scene view, let's zoom out a little bit here. So the parent-child relationship, if you do remember, when the parent moves, the child moves. So if we move this along, it's actually going to kind of kick it out into space, and then it's going to come around. Now remember, we're rotating it by 90 degrees, so it actually is going to come and rest right on top of it. That's actually really cool. We won't be able to see that. We'll kind of be able to see it come like this. We could do something where we modify this, and let me go ahead and select on the sphere. And we'll just bring that down just like that so we can see it a little bit more. So now when we do this, that'll look like that. That's pretty cool. So there are so many exciting things you can do with animation inside of Unity. And this was just one of the 3 methods of animation. In another video, 2 videos, we're going to cover sprite sheet animation as well as script-based animation, so please keep an eye out for those. If you have any questions on this timeline animation, please do not hesitate to leave a comment in the comment section or reach out to your instructor if you have any more questions. Thank you very much.